I never imagined that my life would end at just 12 years old, but there I was, lying weak in a hospital bed, feeling my strength slipping away with each passing second. The doctors explained that I had contracted a rare illness, one that no treatment could cure. Despite their best efforts, nothing seemed to work. My parents sat by my side, their hands tightly gripping mine, tears streaming down their faces. I wanted so badly to comfort them, to tell them not to be sad, but my voice failed me. My eyelids grew heavy, and slowly, everything around me faded to black. Then, a strange sensation came over me. It was as though I had become weightless, light as a feather. I opened my eyes again and found myself floating just above my body. I could still see my parents and the doctors gathered around my bed, their faces filled with concern and sorrow. I longed to reassure them, to let them know that I was okay, but they couldn't hear me. A soft, glowing light appeared in the corner of the room, growing larger and brighter by the second. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I felt an overwhelming pull toward it, and as I moved closer, warmth and happiness filled me. My worries melted away, and all the fear I had been holding on to disappeared. I entered the light, and suddenly, everything changed. I found myself in the most beautiful garden, one that seemed to shimmer with a kind of brilliance I had never encountered on earth. The green of the grass was so vivid, it almost seemed to glow, and the flowers bloomed in every color imaginable, some hues so unique they took my breath away. The air carried a sweet fragrance, blending the scents of fresh flowers and warm bread. In the distance, soft, angelic music played, filling the air with harmony and peace. It was as if 1,000 voices were singing in perfect unison, and each note wrapped me in a feeling of love and serenity. I knew without a doubt that I had entered a very special place. As I marveled at the beauty around me, I saw a figure walking toward me. He wore a white robe that seemed to shine, radiating light. His face was gentle, his eyes filled with compassion and love. At that moment, I knew exactly who he was. It was Jesus. I'd seen images of him in church, but now, standing before me in person, he was more real than anything I had ever known. With a smile that could melt any sorrow, Jesus spoke softly to me. "Welcome, my child. I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice warm and comforting. It was as though his words wrapped me in a sense of safety and joy. Without thinking, I reached out, and in an instant, I found myself in his arms. It was the most loving, comforting embrace I had ever felt, like being surrounded by all the love in the universe. Jesus took my hand, and together we walked through the garden. The grass beneath my feet felt soft and cool, and with each step, I felt stronger, more alive, as though the weight of illness had been completely lifted from me. We came to a magnificent tree, its branches heavy with golden fruit. Jesus plucked one of the fruits and handed it to me. "Eat," he said. "This is the fruit of life." I took a bite, and the flavor was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was sweet, juicy, and bursting with energy. As I savored the taste, I suddenly remembered all the questions I had about heaven, about God, and what lay beyond this life. I wanted to know everything, to understand this new place where I had arrived. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. "Jesus," I said, my voice soft but filled with curiosity, "can I ask you some questions?" His gaze was warm, a serene smile crossing his face as he nodded gently, the kind of smile that made you feel safe, as though everything would be okay. "Of course, my child," he replied, his voice carrying a sense of peace. "What would you like to know?" I stood there for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. There were so many questions swirling in my mind, so many things I wanted to understand, but as I took a deep breath, one question seemed to rise above all the others, pressing on my heart. "When will the world end?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, yet full of the weight of the unknown. Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with love and understanding, and there was no judgment in his gaze, only a gentle kindness. "That's a big question," he said, his tone calm, as though he had heard it countless times before. "But it's not something to be afraid of, my child," he continued, his voice a soft balm to my worried soul. "It's something to look forward to. It means I'll be coming back to Earth to make everything right." The words felt like a promise, a beacon of hope. I nodded slowly, absorbing what he said, but my mind still buzzed with questions. "But how will we know when it's happening?" I asked, my heart racing a little as I pictured the chaos, the confusion that would surely surround such an event. Jesus smiled again, that radiant, comforting smile that seemed to ease all anxiety. "There will be signs," he said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "People will hear about wars and natural disasters. Many will turn away from God, their hearts hardened by fear and confusion, but those who love God should not be afraid. They should be ready, and they should keep doing good things, no matter what." I took in his words, trying to wrap my mind around them, to find a sense of peace in them. It sounded like such a turbulent time, yet there was a sense of hope tucked in between the chaos. "What happens after the world ends?" I asked, my voice trembling a little, not out of fear, but out of wonder and awe at what could come next. Jesus' face softened, his eyes shining with a kind of joy that was infectious. "After that," he said, "there will be a new heaven and a new earth. All the bad things, pain, sorrow, death, they will be no more. There will be no more suffering. Everything will be made perfect. Everyone who loves God will live with him forever, in a place of eternal peace and happiness." The image of such a place filled me with indescribable warmth, like a dream I hadn't dared to believe in. I thought about that for a long time, imagining what it would be like to live in a world with no pain, no sadness, only love and light. But then, another thought crossed my mind, something I had been struggling with for a while. What about the people who don't believe in God? I asked, my voice breaking slightly with concern, as I thought of those I loved who weren't sure of their faith. For a brief moment, Jesus' expression shifted, his smile tinged with a sadness that seemed to echo a deep, unspoken sorrow. "God loves everyone," he said, his voice soft, almost sorrowful, "and he wants everyone to be with him. But he also gives people the choice to love him back. Those who choose not to be with God, well, they will be separated from him. And that's why it's so important to tell others about God's love, while there's still time." As he spoke, a heavy weight seemed to settle on my heart. The sadness in his words resonated deeply within me. I knew how crucial it was to share this love, to make sure no one would be left behind. "So, what should we do while we're waiting for the world to end?" I asked, my voice filled with longing for guidance, a desire to live in a way that mattered. Jesus' smile returned, this time even brighter, as if the weight of the world had lifted from his shoulders. "Live your life with love," he said, his words full of conviction and peace. "Love God with all your heart, and love others as you love yourself. Help those in need, even when it's hard. Forgive those who hurt you, for forgiveness is a gift to both you and them. Pray, and read the Bible to know God better, and always, always remember this. I am with you, even when you can't see me. My love will never leave you." Tears welled in my eyes as I felt his words sink deep into my soul, like a healing balm. The love he spoke of was so pure, so all-encompassing, that I knew it was the answer to everything. It was the only thing that truly mattered. We walked further, the beauty of the garden around us growing more enchanting with every step. It was as if the very air itself was filled with peace, and the earth beneath our feet seemed to hum with life. Everywhere I looked, there were people, each one with a radiant smile, their faces glowing with serenity and joy. Some were singing songs of praise, their voices harmonizing like a choir of angels, while others sat in small circles, talking and laughing, their laughter carrying on the breeze. It was as though we had entered a place where time itself had slowed down, and all that mattered was the overwhelming sense of love and belonging. It felt like one big, extended family, united by a bond so deep and so pure that nothing in this world could ever break it. As we walked along, I noticed something that caught my eye, a grand, golden stand, shining brightly even in the soft glow of the surrounding light. Resting atop it was the most magnificent book I had ever seen, its pages thick and bound with what appeared to be pure light. It was so large and radiant that it seemed to shimmer with its energy as if it contained the very essence of life itself. I stopped in my tracks, mesmerized by its beauty and mystery, and couldn't help but ask, "What's that?" Jesus turned to me, his gaze kind and knowing, and with a gentle smile, he answered, "That is the book of life." His voice was filled with reverence, and as he spoke, I felt the weight of the words. It contains the names of all those who love God and follow Him. I could feel the enormity of what he was saying, and a rush of curiosity flooded my mind. I couldn't stop myself from asking, "Is my name in there?" If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Jesus' smile deepened, his eyes sparkling with an emotion I couldn't quite place, but it filled me with warmth. He nodded, his voice soft but certain. "Yes, it is. And so are the names of many others who have chosen to walk this path. But there's still room for more." His words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, and I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. It was as if my place in this divine story had already been written, and it was beautiful beyond measure. We continued our walk, the garden around us stretching out in all directions, each step revealing new wonders. Soon, we arrived at a crystal-clear river that seemed to flow endlessly, its waters sparkling like diamonds, catching the light eye at every possible angle. The sight of it took my breath away, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. It was so pure, so alive, that it felt as though it was the very heart of the place. "This is the river of life," Jesus said, his voice reverent and filled with awe. "Its waters give life to everything in heaven." I knelt beside the river, my hand reaching out to touch the water. The moment my fingers made contact, I felt a coolness that was both refreshing and invigorating, like a gentle breeze on a hot summer day. The water seemed to cleanse not just my body, but my soul as well. When I stood up again, I felt lighter, stronger, and filled with happiness I could hardly explain. It was as if all the worries and burdens I had carried in my life had melted away, leaving only peace and joy in their wake. As we continued walking along the river, I saw something even more miraculous. The animals, creatures of all kinds, were gathered peacefully around us. I watched in awe as a group of lions frolicked with lambs, their movements graceful and unthreatening. Above us, eagles soared high in the sky, their wings spread wide, gliding effortlessly through the air. What struck me most was that there was no fear in any of them. The lions didn't look hungry, and the lambs didn't seem to fear for their lives. There was no sense of danger, no predator or prey, only harmony. It was as though the very nature of life had been transformed here, and all creatures, big and small, lived together in perfect unity. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of awe and gratitude as I took in the beauty of this place. The world I had known was filled with so much turmoil and strife, but here, in this heavenly garden, all was made right. It was a paradise, not just for humans, but for all of creation, a place where love and peace reigned above all else. And in that moment, I realized that this was what we were all truly meant for, to live in harmony, with one another and with all of God's creation, in a world free from fear, pain, and suffering. I looked over at Jesus, and though he was calm and serene, there was a deep, knowing look in his eyes that seemed to say everything. This was the world he had promised us, a world where everything was as it should be. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed that it was possible. This dream of peace, of eternal life, was not just a fantasy, but a reality waiting to be embraced. As Jesus spoke, his voice was filled with warmth and certainty. In heaven, all of creation lives in perfect harmony. There is no pain, no sorrow, no fear, only love, peace, and endless joy. His words wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, and as we walked, I couldn't help but marvel at the beauty surrounding us. Soon, we arrived at the most breathtaking sight I had ever seen, a magnificent city that seemed to glow from within, radiating an otherworldly brilliance. The walls were built from precious stones, shimmering in 1,000 colors, and the streets beneath my feet were paved with gold. But this was no ordinary gold. It was transparent, like the clearest glass, reflecting everything around it in a way that made it seem almost alive. I bent down and gazed at my reflection in the golden streets, feeling as though I was standing in a place beyond time itself. Jesus turned to me, his expression filled with joy. "This is the New Jerusalem," he said. "It is here that God lives among his people." The air around us felt almost electric with divine presence, as if every breath carried the very essence of love itself. There was no sun, no moon, yet the entire city was bathed in brilliant light, purer and more radiant than anything I had ever seen on earth. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but warm and comforting, filling every corner of the city with a heavenly glow. I turned to Jesus in awe, and he smiled knowingly. "This light comes from God's glory," he explained. "His presence alone illuminates the entire city. There is no need for the sun or the moon here. God's love is all the light we will ever need." As we continued walking through the golden streets, I suddenly noticed people all around me. Familiar faces from stories I had read in the Bible, people I had only imagined but never thought I would meet. My heart leaped as I saw Moses, his eyes wise and kind, standing beside David, the mighty king who had once been a humble shepherd. Nearby, Mary smiled at me with a tenderness that felt like that of a loving mother. They all looked at me, their faces glowing with warmth, and waved as if I were an old friend they had been waiting to see. I couldn't contain the overwhelming happiness that surged within me. How could this place be so perfect? It felt like home, the home my soul had always longed for but never known. At the very heart of the city, we reached a place so glorious that I could barely find the words to describe it. Before us stood a great and mighty throne, more beautiful and awe-inspiring than anything I had ever seen. It radiated power, but not the kind that instilled fear. It was a power wrapped in love, in justice, in the deepest sense of belonging. My breath caught in my throat as I gazed upon it, feeling something beyond human understanding. "This is God's throne," Jesus said softly, his voice full of reverence. "From here, he rules over all with love and perfect justice." I stood still, completely overcome by the presence that filled the air. It wasn't just something I could see or hear. It was something I could feel deep within my soul, as though every part of me was being bathed in a love so pure, so limitless, that it was impossible to resist. For the first time in my life, I felt fully known, fully accepted, and fully loved. Not for what I had done, but simply for who I was. As I stood in awe, a new sound reached my ears. Music, more beautiful than anything I had ever imagined. It wasn't just a song, it was a chorus of voices, blending in perfect harmony. I looked around and saw angels and people alike lifting their voices in praise, their songs filled with an indescribable joy. The melody seemed to wrap around me, lifting my spirit higher and higher until I felt as though I might float away into the very heavens themselves. I wanted to join in, to add my voice to theirs, to sing praises that would never end. But just as I opened my mouth to sing, Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both love and a gentle sadness. He reached out, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's almost time for you to go back," he said softly. My heart sank. Go back? Back to the world I had come from? The thought filled me with a deep longing to stay. Here, everything was perfect. Here, there was no sorrow, no pain, no fear, only love, only peace. I looked at Jesus, my eyes pleading. "Do I have to?" I whispered. He smiled, though there was understanding in his gaze. "You still have a purpose on earth," he said. "There are people who need to hear about what you've seen. Lives are waiting to be touched, hearts waiting to be awakened. And though you may not see me the way you do now, remember this, I am always with you." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Tears welled in my eyes, but I nodded, because I knew he was right. Even though I longed to stay, my journey was not yet finished. With one last glance at the golden streets, the radiant city, and the throne of God itself, I took a deep breath and prepared myself to leave this paradise, knowing, with absolute certainty, that one day I would return. The sadness in my heart was overwhelming, a deep longing to stay in this perfect, peaceful place that felt more like home than anything I had ever known. I didn't want to leave the golden streets, the shining city, or the pure love that filled the air. I looked up at Jesus, my voice trembling as I asked, "Do I have to?" Jesus nodded gently, his eyes full of understanding. "Yes, my child," he said softly. "You still have work to do on earth. Some people need to hear about God's love. You can tell them what you've seen here." Though I understood his words, the thought of leaving this paradise still broke my heart. The peace, the beauty, the sense of belonging, it was all so perfect. But deep inside, I knew Jesus was right. There was more to do, a purpose I had to fulfill. But still, a small, lingering fear crept into my heart. "Will it hurt to go back?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The idea of returning to the world with all its pain and struggles made my chest tighten. Jesus, with his infinite compassion, pulled me into another warm embrace. "No, my child," he whispered soothingly. "It won't hurt. And remember, I'll always be with you, even when you can't see me." His words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, and for the first time, I felt truly at peace with the uncertainty ahead. He took my hand, and together, we began walking back through the garden, the path now bathed in a soft glow. As we walked, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, even in the sadness of leaving. Jesus spoke again, his voice tender but firm. "Remember, no one knows when the world will end," he said. "But that's not the most important thing. What matters is how you live each day. Love God, love others, and be ready for when I come back." His words were like a balm to my soul. They eased my fears and filled me with a deep sense of purpose. I didn't need to worry about when the world would end. What mattered was how I lived in the present, how I loved and shared God's love with the world. I nodded, the weight in my heart lightening just a little. There was still so much to do, and so much love to share. As we neared the bright light, the place where our paths would part, Jesus stopped and looked at me with kind, knowing eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice full of love and encouragement. I took a deep breath, feeling both sadness and excitement swirl within me. I had seen a glimpse of heaven, and now it was time to carry that light back into the world. I nodded, my heart full of gratitude. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady despite the bittersweet emotions. Jesus smiled, his love radiating in that one simple gesture. He embraced me one final time, holding me close as if to say that nothing, not even distance or time, could ever separate us. "Go with my blessing," he said, his voice rich with tenderness. "And remember, I love you always." And as I stepped into the light, carrying with me the love, peace, and beauty of heaven, I knew, no matter what awaited me, I was never alone. His love would always be with me, guiding me, comforting me, and reminding me that one day, we would meet again. And that brings us to the end of this incredible journey. We've explored deep questions about life, faith, and the promise of a new heaven and earth. We've seen the beauty of love, purpose, and the everlasting presence of Jesus in our lives. Now, I want to ask you, what have you learned from this story? What is one lesson that touched your heart, something you'll take with you and apply in your daily life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Your support helps us continue spreading messages of hope and faith.